Music has a way of reaching places words cannot touch. I learned this when I was 17 watching my grandmother slip away from Alzheimer's one memory at a time. She forgot my name, forgot her own daughter, forgot how to feed herself. But when I played the songs she'd loved as a young woman in Naples, something flickered behind her eyes. She couldn't tell me who I was, but she could hum along to melodies from 70 years ago. That's why I became a music therapist, not for the concert halls or the prestige, but for those moments when music becomes a bridge across the void, when a song can do what medicine cannot, bring someone home, even if just for a moment. Sunset Gardens was one of the finest care facilities on Long Island. Wealthy families sent their elderly here when they needed specialized care for dementia and Alzheimer's. The building was beautiful, all warm wood and soft lighting designed to feel like a home rather than a hospital, but no amount of expensive decor could hide what this place really was: a waiting room for the end. I'd been working here for 2 years, playing for residents, leading group sessions, helping families say goodbye through song. Most days I loved my job, other days the weight of all that fading life pressed down on me until I could barely breathe. Today was somewhere in between. Mrs. Morano, room 412. I read from my schedule as I gathered my portable keyboard. New resident transferred from a facility in the city. Dementia, advanced stage, rarely responsive family. Requests daily music therapy sessions, rarely responsive. Those were the hardest cases, the ones where you played and played, hoping for any sign that the music was reaching them, knowing it might never come. But the family had requested daily sessions, which meant they hadn't given up hope, which meant I wouldn't either. I knocked on the door of room 412 and let myself in. The woman in the bed was beautiful, even in her diminished state. Silver hair spread across the pillow, fine bone structure that spoke of elegance, high cheekbones, and a graceful neck. She must have been stunning in her youth, still was in a way that transcended age and illness. Hello, Mrs. Morano, I said softly, approaching the bed. My name is Clara. I'm the music therapist here. I'm going to play some music for you, if that's all right. No response. Her eyes were open, but focused on something far away, something only she could see. I'd learned not to take it personally, the disease-built walls that even the most determined love couldn't breach. Sometimes music could slip through the cracks, sometimes nothing could. I set up my keyboard by the window where the afternoon light could warm us both and began with the standards, the songs that usually worked with patience of her generation, classics from the 40s and 50s, Italian favorites that her chart said she might respond to. Nothing. I played for 30 minutes, cycling through every song I could think of, watching for any sign of recognition, a flutter of eyelids, a twitch of fingers. Anything. Nothing. I was about to pack up to make notes about trying different approaches tomorrow when something made me pause. A memory of my grandmother humming in her garden, teaching me songs her own mother had taught her in the old country. There was one melody I rarely played, a haunting Italian folk song that my grandmother said was very old, very rare, something passed down through generations in her village. I'd never heard it anywhere else, had assumed it was some regional thing lost to time, but Mrs. Morano was Italian. Her chart said she'd been born in a small town outside Rome. Maybe, just maybe, I began to play. The melody was simple but strange, minor key with unexpected turns, the kind of song that sounded like it had been old when the world was young. My fingers found the notes from memory and I hummed along the way my grandmother had taught me. Mrs. Morano's eyes focused for the first time since I'd entered the room. She looked at me, actually looked, her lips parted, and she made a sound, not words exactly, but something almost like she was trying to sing along. He kept playing, heart pounding, afraid to stop, afraid the moment would shatter if I did anything to break it. Her hand lifted from the blanket, reaching toward me, toward the music, toward something only she could see. Enzo, she whispered the first word I'd heard her speak. Her voice cracked with disuse, but the name was clear. Enzo, mio amore. I didn't know who Enzo was, but I knew that sound. The sound of someone remembering, the sound of someone coming home. The door burst open behind me, spun around, fingers stumbling on the keys, and found myself face to face with the most dangerous-looking man I'd ever seen. Tall, broad shoulders that filled the doorway, dark hair cut short, and eyes like black coffee burning with an intensity that made me want to step back. He wore an expensive suit that did nothing to hide the coiled power in his frame, and behind him stood 2 more men equally large. Equally intimidating, but I barely noticed them, because the man in the doorway was staring at me like I'd just performed a miracle or committed a crime. I couldn't tell which. How do you know that melody? His voice was low, rough, like he'd been shouting or crying or both. How do you know that song? I stood frozen, keyboard forgotten. My grandmother taught me. It's an old Italian folk song. I dawn. That's not a folk song. He stepped into the room and I instinctively moved back. That's my parents' song, their wedding song. My father had it composed for my mother. No one knows it, no one except family. I didn't know what to say, didn't understand how a melody my grandmother had hummed in her garden in Brooklyn could be the same as this stranger's family song. But before I could find words, Mrs. Morano spoke again. Look, his man went rigid. She was looking at him now, her eyes clearer than they'd been since I arrived, her hand reaching toward him the way it had reached toward the music. Luca mio figlio. My son, where have you been? I've missed you. I watched something break in his face watched the dangerous man crumble into someone desperate and raw and utterly unprepared for this moment. He crossed to the bed in 2 strides, falling to his knees beside his mother, taking her reaching hand in both of his. Mama, he choked. I'm here, I've been here, I'm always here. Can you see me, Mama? Do you know who I am? Of course I know who you are. She touched his face, her voice gaining strength. You're my Luca, my boy, you look just like your father. She smiled, and it was like watching the sun break through clouds after a storm. You need a haircut, laughed or sobbed. I couldn't tell the difference. Both sounds tore from his throat as he pressed his mother's hand to his cheek. You're right. He managed. You're always right. I'll get a haircut tomorrow. The moment lasted maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3, then I saw the fog roll back into her eyes, watched recognition fade like a photograph left in the sun. She blinked at her son and the confusion returned. Who are you? She asked, pulling her hand away. Where is Enzo? I need to find Enzo, Mama. Luca's voice cracked. Please, Mama, it's me, it's Luca. But she was gone again, retreated to wherever she went. When the present became too difficult to hold, she turned her face to the wall and closed her eyes, leaving her son kneeling by her bed, holding a hand that had forgotten him again. I should have left, should have given him privacy for his grief, but I couldn't move, couldn't do anything except stand there, clutching my keyboard, watching a man's heart break. In real time. Who are you? He asked without looking at me, his voice empty of emotion, now all the rawness locked away behind walls. I recognized the walls of someone who couldn't afford to feel. Clara Bennett. I said, I'm the music therapist. I didn't know the song was personal. I swear my grandmother taught it to me when I was a child. I have no idea how she knew. It was quiet for a long moment, then slowly he stood, turning to face me. I saw him reconstructing himself piece by piece, the grieving son becoming something harder, more controlled, more dangerous. Your grandmother's name. His eyes pinned me in place. What was your grandmother's name? Elena Bennett. I said Elena Rossi before she married, but she went by Nell. Everyone called her Nell. His expression flickered, something passing through those dark eyes that I couldn't read. You said she was from Italy. Yes, a small town outside Rome. She came to America when she was 16. Never talked much about the old country. Which town? I had to think back to stories told decades ago, to names that had seemed unimportant at the time. Fiano, I think Fiano Romano. She mentioned it sometimes, said it was too small for anyone to know. His jaw tightened. Fiano Romano, he repeated. My mother is from Fiano Romano. The coincidence, or maybe not coincidence, hung in the air between us, two women from the same tiny Italian village, one who remembered a song and one who needed to hear it. I don't understand, I admitted. How would my grandmother know your parents' wedding song? There do I, but I intend to find out. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a card. Luca Morano, he said, and the name hit me like cold water. Everyone in New York knew that name. Morano Construction, Morano Investments, Morano, everything. The family that had turned legitimate decades ago but still carried whispers of their darker past. I was standing in a room with the head of one of the most powerful families in the city, and I just accidentally played his mother back to life. I need to know more about your grandmother, he said, about how she knew that song, about the connection to my family. Meet me tomorrow and we'll talk. That sounds like an order, not a request. As he held out the card, and I took it without thinking. My driver will pick you up at 7. And Miss Bennett, thank you for what? For the song. He looked at his mother sleeping peacefully now, her face relaxed in a way I suspected was rare. She hasn't recognized me in 2 years. 2 years of coming here every day, hoping, praying that she'd know me again, and today, because of a song you played, she knew me again. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, just nodded and gathered my things and left as quickly as dignity would allow. But even as I walked down the hallway, his voice echoed in my head. She hasn't recognized me in 2 years, and somehow my grandmother's song had given him his mother back. I didn't understand how, but I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over. The black car arrived at exactly 7. I'd spent the entire day second-guessing myself. Should I go? Should I ignore the card, pretend none of it happened, go back to my quiet life of music and therapy and careful emotional distance? But every time I considered not showing up, I remembered his face when his mother said his name, the raw, desperate hope of a man who'd been waiting 2 years for that moment. So when the sleek Mercedes pulled up outside my Brooklyn apartment, I was ready, waiting on the sidewalk in my best dress, which wasn't saying much, a simple navy blue thing I'd bought for job interviews years ago. The driver, a large man in a dark suit who introduced himself as Marco, opened the door without comment, and we drove in silence through the city toward whatever came next. The restaurant was not what I expected. I'd imagined somewhere flashy, expensive, the kind of place powerful men used to display their wealth. Instead, Marco pulled up to a small Italian place in a neighborhood I didn't recognize. No sign outside, just a red door and the smell of garlic and tomatoes drifting through the evening air. Mr. Morano is waiting inside, Marco said, holding the door open. He asked that you join him in the private dining room. I walked through a restaurant that could have been transported directly from Rome. Worn wooden tables, checkered cloths, elderly couples sharing wine and pasta, a grandmother in the corner feeding bread to a toddler. It was Warm and real and nothing like what I'd expected from a man like Luca Mornoth. Private dining room was in the back through a door that looked like it led to a storage closet. Instead, it opened into a small, intimate space with a single table set for 2 candles flickering in glass holders and Luca standing by the window looking out at a garden. I couldn't see you came, he said without turning. I wasn't sure you would, I almost didn't. But you did. He finally looked at me and I was struck again by the intensity of him, the way he seemed to take up more space than his body actually occupied. Why? Because I want to know how my grandmother knew your family's song, because that connection doesn't make sense and I can't stop thinking about it. Good. He gestured to the table. Sit please, I've taken the liberty of ordering. I hope you like traditional Italiani. Sat, and he sat across from me, and for a moment we just looked at each other, two strangers bound by a melody neither of us fully understood. I spent today researching, he said. Your grandmother Elena Rossi, born 1932 in Fiano Romano, immigrated to America in 1948, married Thomas Bennett in 1955. 1 daughter, your mother, 2 grandchildren, you and your brother. You researched my family. I research everything. When something doesn't make sense, I find answers. He leaned forward, and here's what doesn't make sense. My mother was also born in Fiano Romano in 1956, which means your grandmother left 8 years before my mother was born. They couldn't have known each other unless they knew each other's families. I said the town was small, right? Everyone would have known everyone. That's what I thought too, but here's the thing. He pulled out his phone, showing me an old photograph, a wedding photo, black and white, a young couple standing in front of a church. She looked radiant. He looked proud. My parents' wedding, 1978. My father composed that song for her, played it for the first time at their reception. It was never recorded, never written down. It existed only in their memory and in mine. Then how I started, but he wasn't finished. I called my aunts today, my mother's sisters, the only family she has left in Italy. I asked them about the song, asked if they'd ever shared it with anyone. They were confused, said the song was sacred, private, something my father created just for my mother. They'd never heard of anyone else knowing it too. Sat in silence as food arrived, plates of pasta that smelled incredible, but I'd lost my appetite. The mystery had only deepened. Me grandmother died 3 years ago. I said if she knew something, if there was a connection. I can't ask her anymore. I know, he said, and I'm sorry, but there might be another way. My mother in her lucid moments sometimes remembers things from the past more clearly than the present. If we could get her to that state again, if you could play that song, maybe she could tell us something. You want me to keep playing for her? I want you to try. He met my eyes and I saw the desperation beneath the control. I've spent 2 years watching my mother disappear piece by piece, watching her forget my father, forget me, forget everything she loved. Yesterday for 3 minutes she was herself again. Because of you, because of that song, I will pay whatever you want, give you whatever you need, but please don't stop playing for her. I thought about what he was asking, the commitment, the emotional toll of trying over and over to reach someone who might never fully come back. I thought about my grandmother those last months, watching her slip away, wishing I could do more. I'm already assigned to your mother. I said it's my job to provide music therapy. I don't need extra payment. I just need you to understand that I can't promise anything. Dementia is unpredictable. What happened yesterday might never happen again. I understand. And I need you to tell me something, honestly, anything. Do you really want to know about the song connection? Is this about your mother, or is there something else? Say. He was quiet for a long moment, weighing his answer. Then he said, my father died when I was 12. He was killed, and before you ask, yes, it was connected to our family's former business interests. My mother never recovered. She'd already lost the love of her life, and then slowly she began losing herself to him. Sorry. The song, he continued, was the last thing my father played for her the night before he died. They danced in the kitchen, just the two of them, thinking I was asleep. But I watched from the stairs, watched him hold her, watched her laugh, watched them move to a melody I'd never heard before. He stopped, swallowing hard. That's the last memory I have of him alive, dancing with my mother to their song. And now a stranger knows it. No, a stranger knows it. He agreed, and I need to understand why, because either it's the most remarkable coincidence in history, or there's a connection between our families that no one has ever told me about. And given my father's death, given the secrets my family has kept, I need to know if this is one of them. You think my grandmother was connected to your father's death? I think I don't know anything, and I hate not knowing. He leaned back, his expression softening slightly. I'm not accusing you of anything, Clara. I've had you thoroughly investigated. You're exactly what you appear to be, a talented music therapist with a gift for reaching people who've retreated from the world. But your grandmother, that's a different story, and I intend to find out what she was hiding. We ate after that, the food too good to waste even with heavy conversation hanging over us. He asked about my work, about why I'd chosen therapy over performance, and I found myself telling him about my grandmother, about watching her forget, about discovering that music could bring her back when nothing else could. You understand, he said quietly, you understand what it's like to watch someone you love disappear. Yes, then you understand why I can't let this go, why I have to know everything even if the answers are painful. I understand, but I need you to understand something too, whatever we find out about our families. Connection, it doesn't change what I do. Your mother needs music therapy, not investigation. She needs someone focused on her care, not on solving mysteries. Agreed. He nodded. Your priority is her treatment. Mine is finding answers. We can work in parallel. And Clara, thank you for agreeing to help. I haven't agreed to anything yet except doing my job. That's enough for now. He almost smiled, the first crack in his controlled exterior for. Now Marco drove me home after dinner and I sat in the back of the Mercedes, trying to process everything: the mystery of the song, the intensity of Luca Morano, the feeling that I just stepped into something much bigger than a simple coincidence. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Thank you for tonight. I meant what I said about my mother. You gave me hope for the first time in 2 years. That's worth more than you know. I stared at the message, feeling something shift in my chest, something I wasn't ready to examine. Too close. Larry, welcome, I typed back. I'll see your mother tomorrow morning. I'll be there, came the immediate reply. I should have been nervous about that, should have been worried about spending more time with a man who made me feel off balance. Instead I felt something else, entirely anticipation. Next morning Luca was already in his mother's room when I arrived, sat in the chair by her bed holding her hand, speaking softly in Italian. She wasn't responding, staring at the ceiling with that faraway look I'd come to recognize, but he kept talking. Anyway, kept trying to reach her through words alone. Good morning, I said, setting up my keyboard. He looked up and I saw the exhaustion in his face, the signs of a sleepless night. I've been here since 5, he admitted. I keep hoping she'll wake up clear like yesterday. Butte, it doesn't work that way, I said gently. The lucid moments come when they come. We can't force them, just create conditions that might help, and that's what music does. It creates conditions, then play. He said, please. I started with gentle pieces, warming up, easing into the session, watching Juliana for any sign of response. She remained still, distant, lost in whatever world her mind had constructed to protect her from the present. After 20 minutes, I shifted to the melody. The effect was immediate, not as dramatic as yesterday, but undeniable. Her breathing changed, her fingers twitched against the blanket, her eyes moved toward the sound, toward me, toward something only she could see. Keep playing, Luca whispered, moving closer to the bed. Mama, can you hear me? It's Luca, your son. She turned her head slowly, like moving through water, and looked at him, not with recognition exactly, but with something, curiosity maybe, or the memory of recognition. You have his eyes, she said, her voice thin and distant. My Enzo, you have his eyes. I do, Luca said, and I heard his voice catch. Mama, do you remember this song, Dancing? She smiled, and for a moment she was young again, beautiful and full of life. We danced in the kitchen. He was such a terrible dancer, but I loved him anyway. I know, Mama. Luca took her hand. Who else knew this song? Did you ever teach it to anyone? Share it with anyone? Her face clouded, confusion creeping back. Elena, she said slowly. Elena knew we were girls together before I left. She stayed and I went away, and the song was hers first. Mine. The word came out before I could stop it. Clara, I said. My grandmother's name was Elena. Juliana's eyes found mine and something sparked there. A recognition of a different kind. You look like her, she said. The same eyes, the same hands on the piano. Nell always played so beautifully. I felt tears prick my eyes. My grandmother's nickname. She couldn't have known that she couldn't have unless she was there. Luca said, understanding dawning. Your grandmother was there when my father composed that song? No, I shook my head. Not composed. Your mother said the song was Elena's first, my grandmother's first, which means me father didn't write it. He learned it. Luca's voice was barely a whisper. He learned it from your grandmother, but how? Why would she teach him their wedding song? The answer was there in Juliana's fading eyes and the connection between two women from a tiny Italian village, and a melody that had traveled across oceans and decades to bring their children together. I think, I said slowly, I think we need to find out a lot more about what happened in Fiano Romano before your mother left. Juliana's eyes had closed, her moment of clarity passing, but her lips moved one last word before sleep took her. Sisters. Luca and I looked at each other, the same impossible thought forming. Sisters. What if our grandmothers weren't just friends? What if they were family? Sisters, the word haunted me for days. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't stop replaying Juliana's voice, the certainty in her fading eyes, the way she'd said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Sisters. My grandmother and Luca's mother. Which would make us, what? Cousins? Some distant relation bound by blood neither of us had known about. Luca threw himself into research with an intensity that bordered on obsession. I've contacted genealogists in Italy, he told me 3 days later, spreading documents across the table in his mother's room while I set up for our session. Birth records, church documents, anything that might connect our families. And nothing yet. The records from Fiano Romano are incomplete. The war destroyed a lot of documentation. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. But I found something else. A photograph. He handed me an old picture, edges worn, colors faded to sepia. Two young women stood arm in arm in front of a stone fountain. They wore simple dresses, their hair styled in the fashion of the 1940s. One was clearly Juliana, younger, vibrant, but unmistakably her. The other, that's my grandmother, I whispered. That's Nell. Turn it over. I flipped the photograph. On the back, in faded ink, Juliana y Elena Sorel per semper. 1947. Sisters forever. Doesn't say blood sisters, Luca said carefully. It could be a term of endearment. Close friends sometimes, they look alike. I studied the photograph more closely. The cheekbones. The shape of their eyes. Luca, they really look alike. I know. His voice was heavy. I've been staring at that picture for hours. I set down the photograph, my mind racing. If they were actually sisters, why wouldn't my grandmother have told anyone? Why keep it secret for 60 years? That's what I intend to find out. He met my eyes. There's someone in Italy who might have answers. My mother's cousin, Lucia. She's 92, but her mind is still sharp. She remembers the old days, the old stories. You're going to Italy? We're going to Italy. He said it like it was already decided. You need to come. You're Elena's granddaughter. If there's a family connection, you have as much right to know as I do. I can't just leave. I have patience, responsibilities. I've already spoken with Beatrice. She's agreed to give you 2 weeks off, fully paid. I've also arranged for a colleague of hers to cover your sessions. You arranged my life without asking me? I arranged an opportunity. His expression softened slightly. You can say no. I won't force you. But Clara, don't you want to know? Don't you want to understand why your grandmother kept this secret? What happened between her and my mother? Why that song connected them across decades and continents? I did want to know. That was the problem. I wanted to know so badly it frightened me. When do we leave? Tomorrow. The flight to Rome was surreal that I'd never flown first class before. The seats were bigger than my apartment's couch, the food was actually edible, and Luca spent most of the journey working on his laptop or making hushed phone calls in rapid Italian. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Too many thoughts. Too many questions. You're nervous, he observed somewhere over the Atlantic. I'm about to dig into family secrets that have been buried for 70 years. Nervous seems appropriate. Fair point. He closed his laptop. Can I ask you something personal? You've already researched my entire life. What's left? Why music therapy? You graduated from Juilliard with honors. You could have had a concert career. Instead, you chose to play for people who might not even hear you. I considered the question. It deserved a real answer. My grandmother, I said finally. In her last years, when the Alzheimer's took everything else, music was the only thing that reached her. I'd play, and for a few minutes, she'd be herself again. She'd remember my name, remember stories from her childhood, remember that she was loved. I paused. Concert halls are beautiful, but they're full of people who don't need the music, not really. They want entertainment, culture, something to discuss at dinner parties. People I work with now, they need it. The music is their lifeline. That matters more to me than standing ovations. Luca was quiet for a long moment. Then you're remarkable. You know that? I'm just doing what feels right. That's what makes it remarkable. He held my gaze. Most people do what's expected, what's profitable, what's safe. You chose meaning over success. That takes courage. I didn't know how to respond to that. Didn't know how to process the warmth spreading through my chest at his words. Tell me about your mother, I said, deflecting. Before the dementia. What was she like? His expression shifted, softening with memory. She was everything. Warm, fierce, loving, terrifying when she was angry. She sang constantly. For a folk song's lullabies. Our house was never quiet when she was around. He smiled slightly. She was also incredibly stubborn. Once she decided something, that was it. No arguments, no negotiations. My father used to say she could outstubborn a mountain. She sounds wonderful. She was. She is. His voice tightened. The woman in that bed, the one who doesn't know me, that's not really her. She's still in there somewhere. I have to believe that. The music suggests she is, I said gently. The way she responds to the melody. The moments of clarity. She's fighting, Luca. Even if she doesn't know it. That's why you matter. He turned to face me fully. You're not just a therapist to me. You're the first person who's given me hope in 2 years. Whatever we find in Italy, whatever secrets we uncover, I need you to know that. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. I should have looked away. Should have maintained professional distance. Instead, I said, whatever we find it together. He nodded once. Together. Fiano Romano was smaller than I'd imagined. A village, really, nestled in the hills north of Rome. Stone buildings, narrow streets, a church that had stood for centuries. Time moved differently here. You could feel it in the air, in the way old men sat in the piazza watching the world go by, in the bells that marked the hours as they had for generations. Lucia Morano lived in a small house at the edge of the village. She was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with sharp dark eyes that missed nothing. When she saw Luca, she burst into tears. Luca, mio nipote. She embraced him fiercely. You look just like your father. Every time I see you, I see Enzo. It's good to see you, Zia. He kissed both her cheeks. This is Clara Bennett, Elena Rossi's granddaughter. Lucia went still. Her eyes found mine, and I saw something flicker there. Recognition? Fear. Elena's granddaughter, she repeated slowly. After all these years, you knew my grandmother? I asked. Everyone knew Elena. She was. Lucia paused, choosing her words carefully. She was unforgettable. Come inside. Sit. There's much to discuss. Her house was small but immaculate. Photographs covered every surface. Generations of family, weddings and christenings and ordinary moments captured forever. She led us to a sitting room and disappeared into the kitchen, returning with espresso and biscotti that she insisted we eat before any serious conversation. Now, she said, settling into her chair, you want to know about Elena and Giuliana, about the song, about the secrets. You know about the song? Luca leaned forward. I know everything. I was there when Enzo learned it. I was there when Elena left. I've kept the secret for 70 years, but... She looked at me, her eyes soft with memory. You have her face. Her hands. Watching you is like seeing a ghost. Please, I said. Tell us. Lucia took a deep breath. Elena and Giuliana were not sisters by blood. But they were raised as such. Elena's mother died in childbirth. Her father, unable to care for an infant alone, gave her to his sister, Giuliana's mother. The girls grew up believing they were cousins, then discovered the truth when they were teenagers. So they were actually cousins by blood, sisters by circumstance. Lucia smiled sadly. They were inseparable, did everything together. And Elena, your grandmother, she had a gift for music. She composed songs, melodies that haunted you. One in particular she wrote for Giuliana. A song about sisterhood, about love that transcended blood. It was their song. The melody, I breathed. She wrote it. Yes. And when Enzo fell in love with Giuliana, he asked Elena to teach it to him. He wanted to give Giuliana something meaningful, something that honored the bond between the sisters. He learned the song, played it at their wedding, and it became theirs. But why did Elena leave? Luca asked. Why go to America and never speak of this? Lucia's face darkened. Because of the war. Because of choices made in desperate times. Because sometimes love isn't enough to overcome what history demands of us. What does that mean? It means... She paused, gathering herself. Elena was engaged. To a man from the village. A man who collaborated with the Germans during the occupation. When the war ended, when the truth came out about what he'd done, Elena was shamed by association. She hadn't known, none of us had, but that didn't matter. The village turned on her. Even Juliana, who loved her like a sister, couldn't protect her. So she ran, I said quietly. She went to America to escape. She went to survive. And she never looked back. Never contacted Juliana again. Never spoke of Fiano Romano or the family she'd left behind. Lucia wiped her eyes. It broke Juliana's heart. She never stopped wondering what happened to her sister. Never stopped hoping Elena would come home. She never did, I said. She died 3 years ago. She never came home. But you did. Lucia reached out, taking my hand. You came. You found Juliana. You played Elena's song. Don't you see? For 70 years, the sisters are finally reunited. Through you. I felt tears streaming down my face. Grief for my grandmother, who'd carried this pain alone for decades. Grief for Juliana, who'd lost her sister to circumstances beyond anyone's control. Grief for the years wasted, the connections severed, the love that had survived despite everything. Luca's hand found mine. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. There's something else, Lucia said. Something you should have. She rose, disappearing into another room. When she returned, she carried a small wooden box, worn with age. Elena left this behind when she fled. Juliana kept it all these years, hoping to return it someday. She handed the box to me. It belongs to you now. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a stack of handwritten sheet music. Songs my grandmother had composed. Songs that had never been heard outside this village. And on top, a letter to whoever finds this. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But the music remains. Play it for Juliana. Tell her I never stopped loving her. Tell her I'm sorry, her sister always. Elena, I couldn't speak. Couldn't do anything except hold the letter to my chest and cry for a woman I'd loved without ever truly knowing, and beside me, Luca held my hand through all of it together just as we'd promised. We stayed in Italy for 3 more days. Lucia insisted on showing us everything. The house where Elena and Juliana had grown up, now owned by strangers but still standing. The church where they'd been baptized, the fountain in the photograph, the hillside where they'd played as children. Every stone, every street corner held a memory she was eager to share. They were inseparable, she told us as we walked through the village. Where you saw one, you saw the other. Elena was the quiet one, always with her music. Juliana was fire, passionate, dramatic, full of life. They balanced each other. What happened when Elena left? I asked. How did Juliana react? Lucia's face darkened. She was devastated. Refused to eat for weeks. Kept going to Elena's room, expecting to find her there. When it finally sank in that she was gone, that she wasn't coming back, she shook her head. Something in Juliana broke. She threw herself into other things, singing, eventually Enzo, but she never stopped waiting. Every time someone knocked on the door, she'd look up with hope in her eyes. For 70 years. Luca's voice was rough. For 70 years. Even after the dementia started, she'd sometimes call out for Elena. Ask where her sister was. The nurses thought she was confused, mixing up names. But I knew. She was still waiting. I thought about my grandmother. All those years in Brooklyn, never speaking of Italy, never mentioning a sister who wasn't quite a sister. Had she been waiting too? Had she spent 70 years regretting the choice she'd made, the letter suggested she had died on our last night in Fiano Romano. Luca and I sat on the terrace of our small hotel, watching the sun set over the hills. The box of music sat between us, its contents spread across the table. Dozens of compositions, some complete, some fragments, all written in my grandmother's careful hand. "What will you do with them?" Luca asked. "Play them. For your mother." I touched the pages gently. These are Elena's words to Juliana. All the things she couldn't say in person. Maybe they'll reach her the way the first song did. And if they do, if she has another lucid moment, then we tell her the truth. That her sister never forgot her. That she was loved until the very end. I looked at him. That's what you'd want, isn't it? If it were you. Yes. His voice was barely a whisper. That's exactly what I'd want. We sat in silence for a while, the evening air cooling around us. Then Lucas spoke again. "Clara, I need to tell you something." "What?" "When I first met you in my mother's room, I thought you were a threat. A stranger who knew something she shouldn't. My first instinct was to investigate you, to find out what angle you were playing." He met my eyes. "I'm sorry for that. For treating you like a puzzle to solve instead of a person. You were protecting your mother. I understand. But then I got to know you. Watched you with her. Saw the way you gave everything to your patients, asked nothing in return." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. "You're not what I expected. You're so much more." My heart hammered in my chest. "Luca, I know the timing is complicated. We're in the middle of unraveling a 70-year-old mystery. My mother is dying piece by piece. Your world has been turned upside down." He turned my hand over, tracing the lines of my palm. "But I can't pretend anymore. I can't pretend I don't feel something when I look at you. Something I haven't felt in a very long time." "What do you feel?" "Hope." The word was simple but heavy. "When I'm with you, I feel hope. For my mother. For myself. For whatever future might exist beyond all this darkness." He looked up at me. "Is that insane? To feel hope in the middle of so much uncertainty?" "No." I turned my hand, lacing my fingers through his. "It's not insane. It's human. And do you?" He hesitated, vulnerability crossing his usually controlled features. "Do you feel anything?" I thought about all the reasons I should say no. He was technically my patient's family. He came from a world of danger and secrets. We'd known each other for barely 2 weeks, none of it mattered. "Yes," I said. "I feel something. I've been trying not to, but I do." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Good. Because I'd hate to be alone in this." "You're not alone." I squeezed his hand. "Whatever comes next, you're not alone." He leaned across the table and kissed me. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper when I responded. His hand came up to cup my face, and I felt something shift between us. Something that had been building since that first day in his mother's room when we finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless. He rested his forehead against mine. "Whatever comes next," he repeated. "Together. Together." We returned to New York the following morning. The flight felt different this time. Luca worked less, smiled more. He held my hand during takeoff and didn't let go until we landed. Something had changed between us in Italy, and neither of us was pretending otherwise. Marco met us at the airport with news. "Your mother had a good day yesterday," he told Luca. "The nurses said she was more responsive than usual. Asked about you several times." "She asked for me?" Hope flared in Luca's eyes. "By name. She kept saying she needed to tell you something important." We drove directly to Sunset Gardens, the box of music cradled carefully in my lap. When we reached Juliana's room, she was awake, sitting up in bed with a clarity in her eyes that made my breath catch. "Luca." She reached for her son. You came back. I knew you would. Mama. He crossed to her, taking her hands. I'm always coming back. You know that. I had the strangest dream. Her voice was stronger than I'd ever heard it. Elena was there. My sister. She was playing music just like she used to. And she said, she paused, struggling to remember. She said someone was coming. Someone with her eyes. Someone who would bring the music back. Luca looked at me. I stepped forward, still holding the box. Mrs. Morano, I said gently. Juliana. My name is Clara. I'm Elena's granddaughter. The old woman's eyes went wide. Elena's, but how? She left. She never came back. No, she didn't. But she never forgot you. I opened the box, showing her the sheets of music, the letter. She kept writing music. All of it for you. She was sorry she left. She loved you until the very end. Tears streamed down Juliana's face. My sister. My Elena. She asked me to play for you. To bring you her music. I moved to the keyboard I'd set up days ago. Would you like to hear it? Please. The word was barely a whisper. Please play. I began with the melody that had started everything. The song Elena had written for her sister, the song Enzo had learned for his wedding, the song that had somehow survived 70 years and found its way back home. Juliana closed her eyes, tears still falling, then I played the others. Song after song from the box, melodies my grandmother had composed in her Brooklyn apartment, thinking of the sister she'd left behind. Some were sad, some hopeful, some simply beautiful. All of them were love letters, written in the only language Elena had trusted. Halfway through, Juliana began to hum. Her voice was thin, fragile, but unmistakably present. She knew these songs. Somewhere in her damaged mind, the memory remained. Luca stood frozen by her bed, watching his mother come alive in ways he'd never seen. When I finally stopped playing, silence filled the room. She never forgot me, Juliana whispered. All those years. She never forgot. Never. I moved to her bedside, taking her hand. She loved you always, Juliana. Always. The old woman looked at me with clear, present eyes. You have her gift. The music. It's inside you too. She taught me. Without knowing it, she taught me everything. Then you must keep playing. Promise me. Her grip tightened. Promise me you'll keep the music alive. I promise. She smiled, a real smile full of peace. Then she looked at Luca. This girl, she said. This girl is special. Don't let her go. I won't, Mama. Luca's voice broke. I won't let her go. Good. Juliana settled back against her pillows. Good. Now play something happy. I'm tired of crying. I laughed through my own tears and found an upbeat piece from the box. Something bright and joyful, written by a young woman who still believed in happy endings, and for a while, sitting in that room with Luca beside me and Juliana humming along, I believed in happy endings too. The weeks that followed were the happiest I could remember. I came to Sunset Gardens every day, playing for Juliana, watching her respond to music that had crossed an ocean to reach her. The lucid moments came more frequently now, sometimes lasting hours instead of minutes. She told stories about Elena, about their childhood, about the village they'd loved, and Luca was there. Always there. He rearranged his life to be present for his mother's good days. Sat beside her bed while I played. Held her hand when she remembered him, held it tighter when she didn't. And when the sessions ended, when his mother slept peacefully with music still echoing in her dreams, he turned to me. We built something between us. Something real. The tea started with dinners after my sessions, evolved into long walks through the city, became nights spent talking until dawn about everything and nothing. He told me about his father, about the business he'd inherited, about the weight of responsibility that came with the Morano name. I never wanted this life, he admitted one night in his apartment, the city glittering below us. But when my father died, there was no one else. My mother needed stability. The family needed leadership. I became what they needed me to be. What did you want to be? A musician, believe it or not. He laughed at my expression. My father used to play guitar. Taught me when I was young. I was good, not like you, but good enough. I dreamed of conservatory, concert halls, a life filled with music instead of business meetings and security details. What happened? I grew up. Realized dreams are luxuries people like me can't afford. He pulled me closer. But watching you play, seeing what music does for my mother, it reminds me why I loved it. Why I still love it. It's not too late, I said. To love music, I mean. It's never too late. Maybe not. Kissed me softly. Not with you around. 3 months into our relationship, Juliana had her longest lucid period by an entire day. 12 hours of clarity, of conversation, of being herself again. She asked about everything, Luca's work, my music, how we'd met, what our plans were. She told us about Enzo, about their wedding, about the life they'd built together, and in the evening, as the sun set through her window, she asked Luca to bring her something from home. Your father's guitar, she said. I want to hear you play. Luca went pale. Mama, I haven't played in years. Then it's time you started again. She looked at me. You too. Both of you. Play something together. Marco retrieved the guitar from the Morano estate. It was old, well-worn, clearly loved. Luca held it like something precious and painful at once. I don't know if I can, he said quietly. You can. I sat beside him, my portable keyboard ready. We'll play together. Just like she asked. We started with the melody. The one that had brought us together. I played the keyboard part, and slowly, hesitantly, Luca began to pick out the harmony on his father's guitar. His technique was rusty, his fingers uncertain, but the music was there. Juliana watched us with tears streaming down her face. That's it, she whispered. That's the sound. My Enzo and my Elena playing together again. She closed her eyes, and I saw something settle in her expression. Peace. Acceptance. The look of someone who'd finally found what they'd been searching for. She died that night in her sleep, with music still echoing in her room. The last thing she'd seen was her son playing his father's guitar while I played her sister's songs. The last thing she'd heard was love. Grief is a strange companion. Doesn't arrive all at once. Comes in waves, sometimes gentle, sometimes devastating, always unexpected. I learned this watching my grandmother fade. I learned it again watching Luca lose his mother. The funeral was held 3 days after Juliana's death. It was larger than I'd expected. Hundreds of people filled the church, family, friends, business associates, people whose lives had been touched by Juliana Morano in ways I was only beginning to understand. She'd been more than a mob wife, more than a dementia patient. She'd been a force of nature. Luca stood at the front, delivering the eulogy with a composure that broke my heart. He spoke of her warmth, her stubbornness, her voice that could fill a room. He spoke of the years lost to illness and the moments reclaimed through music. And when his voice finally cracked, when the tears came despite his best efforts to contain them, I understood why everyone had loved her. She'd raised a man capable of such love. That was legacy enough. After the service, after the reception, after the endless stream of condolences and handshakes, Luca found me in the garden of the Morano estate. I'd slipped away, needing air, needing space from the weight of so much shared grief. There you are. He sat beside me on the stone bench. I was looking for you. I'm sorry. I just needed a moment. Don't apologize. He took my hand. I've needed about 1,000 moments today. None of them helped. Is there anything I can do? You're already doing it. He squeezed my fingers. You're here? That's enough. We sat in silence, watching the sun set over gardens his mother had designed decades ago. Roses she'd planted, paths she'd walked, memories embedded in every stone and flower. She was ready, Lucas said finally. Wasn't she? I think so. That last day she had peace. She knew you loved her, knew Elena had loved her. She'd heard the music, seen you play. All the loose ends were tied. Because of you. You tied them. I just played the songs. Your grandmother wrote them. Your mother heard them. I was just the messenger. You were more than that. He turned to face me. You were the miracle. The connection between past and present. Without you, my mother would have died still waiting for a sister who never came. Without you, I would have spent the rest of my life wondering if she ever really saw me in those final years. Luca, let me finish. His eyes held mine. I've been thinking about what comes next. After today, after the mourning period, after I stop feeling like there's a hole in my chest where she used to be. There's no timeline for grief. Take whatever time you need. That's just it. I don't want to take time. I don't want to pause my life and wait for the pain to pass. He cupped my face in his hands. I want to live. Really live. The way my mother would have wanted. And I want to do it with you. My heart hammered against my ribs. What are you saying? I'm saying that life is short. My father taught me that. My mother's illness taught me that. Every day is borrowed time, and I don't want to waste another moment pretending I'm not completely, desperately in love with you. You love me? I love you. I've loved you since you played that song and brought my mother back to me. I've loved you through every session, every dinner, every moment we've stolen together. Kissed me softly. I love you, Clara Bennett, and I want to spend whatever time I have left loving you. Tears streamed down my face. Happy tears, grieving tears, everything mixed together. I love you too, I whispered. I didn't expect to. Didn't plan to. But I do. Then stay with me. Not just today. Forever. Stay with me forever. That sounds like a proposal. It's not. Not yet. He smiled through his own tears. When I propose, it'll be proper. With a ring and flowers and none of this funeral sadness hanging over us. But this is a promise. A promise that the proposal is coming. That I'm not going anywhere. That whatever we build together starts right here, right now. Kissed him. Deep and certain and full of everything I couldn't put into words. I'll stay, I said against his lips. For as long as you want me. Forever, then. Forever. The months after Juliana's death were a study in transformation. Luca threw himself into change. He restructured the family business, distancing it further from the shadows that had haunted previous generations. He established the Juliana Morano Foundation for Alzheimer's research, funding studies and support programs across the country. He turned grief into action, pain into purpose. And he played music again. I came home one evening to find him in our apartment. We'd moved in together 2 months after the funeral, with his father's guitar in his hands. He was playing something soft and melancholy, a melody I didn't recognize. What's that? I asked, setting down my bag. Something I'm writing. He looked up, almost shy. For you. You're composing? Trying to. Your grandmother inspired me. All those songs she wrote for Juliana. I wanted to write something for you. Something that says what words can't. I sat beside him on the couch. Play it for me? He did. The melody was simple but beautiful, minor key shifting to major, sadness transforming into hope. When he finished, I was crying again. It's not done yet, he said quickly. There's more I want to add. It's perfect. Kissed him. It's absolutely perfect. I was thinking. He set down the guitar. Maybe we could work on it together. You on piano, me on guitar. like we did for my mother. I'd love that. Good. He smiled. Because I have a lot more songs in me. Years worth, maybe. And I want to write all of them with you. Spring arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. I'd left Sunset Gardens 3 months earlier, not because I'd stopped caring, but because my work there was done. The foundation Luca had established now funded a full music therapy program at the facility. Other therapists carried on the work I'd started. Instead, I'd started something new. The Elena and Juliana Music Therapy Center, located in Brooklyn, offering free sessions to dementia patients and their families. Luca had funded it. I ran it. Together, we'd created something that honored both our grandmothers, the one who'd written the songs and the one who'd waited 70 years to hear them. You look happy, my brother said, visiting from Boston where he worked as an engineer. Happier than I've ever seen you. I am happy. I glanced at Luca across the room, where he was deep in conversation with one of our donors. Ridiculously happy. He's good for you. The scary mob boss thing threw me at first, but... Former mob boss, I corrected. The family's legitimate now. Sure it is. He grinned. But seriously, Clara. You deserve this. After everything with Grandma, after all those years of giving to everyone else, you deserve someone who gives back. He does. He gives everything. Then hold on to him. My brother squeezed my shoulder. The good ones are rare. I know. That night, after the event ended and the guests departed, Luca and I walked through the center one last time. The rooms were quiet now, but tomorrow they'd be full of music. Full of families finding connection through melody. Full of the legacy our grandmothers had started without ever knowing it. Happy with how it turned out? Luca asked. More than happy. I leaned into him. This is exactly what I wanted. What they would have wanted. Speaking of what people want. He stopped walking, turning to face me. There's something I've been waiting to do. Something I promised I'd do properly, with a ring and flowers and no funeral sadness. My heart stopped. Luca. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a ring, vintage, elegant, a diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires that caught the light. This was my grandmother's ring. My father's mother. She gave it to my mother, who gave it to me with instructions to give it to someone worthy. He smiled. She met you once, you know. One of her lucid days before she died. She told me you were the one. That she could see it in how you played, how you loved, how you gave yourself to the music. She said that. She said a lot of things that day. But that's what I remember most. He took a breath. Clara Bennett. You walked into my mother's room and changed everything. You brought music back to my family, love back to my life, hope back to my heart. I can't imagine facing another day without you beside me. He knelt. Will you marry me? I didn't hesitate. Didn't need to think. The answer had been yes since the day I played that song, since the moment his mother opened her eyes and called his name, since the first time he looked at me and saw someone worth keeping. Yes. I pulled him to his feet, kissing him through tears. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the ring onto my finger. Fit perfectly. Forever, he said. Forever, I agreed. And standing in the center we'd built together, surrounded by the legacy of two women who'd loved each other across decades and oceans, I knew our story was just beginning. Music had brought us together. Love would keep us there. The wedding was held in Fiano Romano. It seemed fitting somehow. The village where our grandmothers had grown up, where the song had been written, where the story that led to us had begun 70 years earlier. Lucia, now 93 but still sharp as ever, insisted on hosting the ceremony in the same church where Elena and Juliana had been baptized. Full circle, she said, tears in her eyes as she watched us exchange vows. Finally, full circle. The guest list was small. My family, my parents, my brother, a handful of cousins who'd made the trip from America. Luca's family, aunts and uncles and cousins I was still learning to keep straight, all of them welcoming me with the overwhelming warmth that seemed to define Italian families. And scattered throughout, the people who'd become important to us along the way. Marco, stoic as ever but smiling. Beatrice from Sunset Gardens. The staff from the therapy center we'd built together. I wore my grandmother's pearls. The only piece of jewelry she'd brought with her from Italy, now returned to the land where they'd originated. Luca wore his father's cufflinks. A connection to the man he'd lost too young, the man whose guitar had helped bring us together, and when the priest asked if I would take this man to be my husband, I answered in Italian. Si. Per sempre. Yes. Forever. Luca's smile could have lit the entire church. The reception was held in the village piazza, under strings of lights that sparkled against the evening sky. Tables overflowed with food, pasta and bread and wine that had been made in these hills for generations. The music played from speakers but also from live musicians that Luca had hired, including a guitarist who specialized in traditional Italian folk songs. I have a surprise, Luca said, taking my hand as the sun began to set. Come with me. He led me away from the crowd, through narrow streets I was beginning to recognize, to the fountain where our grandmothers had posed for that photograph 70 years ago. It had been cleaned and restored, I suspected with Murano money, and now sparkled in the fading light. I wanted to give you something, Luca said, reaching into his jacket. A wedding gift. He handed me a leather-bound folder. Inside were documents, official-looking papers covered in Italian and English text. What is this? The house where Elena grew up. Where she and Giuliana played as children. Where she wrote the songs. He pointed to one of the papers. I bought it. For us. Place we can come whenever we want. A place where their memory can live on. I stared at the documents, then at him, then at the fountain where two young women had stood arm in arm before the world tore them apart. You bought me a house. I bought us a home. A second home. Cupped my face. I know it's a lot. If you don't want it, we can. I kissed him before he could finish. Deep and grateful and full of more emotion than I knew how to express. It's perfect, I whispered against his lips. It's absolutely perfect. I hoped you'd think so. He smiled. I had them restore it to what it looked like in the 1940s. The piano is still there, the one Elena used to play. It's been tuned and repaired. Ready for you. Tears streamed down my face. You're impossible. You know that? Possibly in love with you. Does that count? It counts for everything. We stood by the fountain as the stars emerged, two people bound by a melody that had survived generations. Somewhere I liked to think Elena and Giuliana were watching. Finally reunited. Finally at peace, finally together. Through us. 2 years later, the Elena and Giuliana Music Therapy Center had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started as a single location in Brooklyn was now a network of 5 centers across the Northeast, serving thousands of patients and families each year. We'd trained dozens of music therapists, funded countless research projects, and touched more lives than I could count, but today none of that mattered. Today I was sitting in a doctor's office, holding Luca's hand, waiting for news that would change everything. Well, Dr. Chin said, looking up from her computer with a smile. Congratulations! You're definitely pregnant. About 8 weeks along. Luca made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. His hand tightened around mine so hard it almost hurt. Pregnant, he repeated. We're having a baby? You're having a baby. Dr. Chen's smile widened. A healthy one from what I can see. We'll schedule regular checkups, but everything looks exactly as it should. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. We'd been trying for 6 months, had started to worry that it might not happen, had tried to prepare ourselves for a future that might not include children, and now this. A baby. Our baby. Say something, Luca said, turning to look at me. Clara, say something. You're scaring me. I'm happy, I managed. I'm so happy I can't find words for it. He pulled me into his arms right there in the doctor's office, holding me while I cried, while he cried, while Dr. Chen tactfully busied herself with paperwork. A baby, he whispered against my hair. We're going to be parents. Terrifying thought. Terrifying and wonderful. He pulled back, wiping my tears with his thumbs. Our mothers would be so happy. Both of them. All of them. I thought about my grandmother, who'd never known her great-grandchild would exist. About Juliana, who died just months before Luca and I got engaged. About all the generations that had led to this moment, the loves and losses, the separations and reunions, the songs that had carried love across oceans and decades. We should name her Elena, I said. If it's a girl, Elena Juliana Morano. And if it's a boy, Enzo. I smiled through my tears. After your father. The man who learned the song. Luca kissed me. Soft and sweet and full of promise. Whatever they are, he said, they're going to know everything. About Elena and Juliana. About the song that brought us together. About how music can heal what nothing else can reach. They'll know, I agreed. We'll make sure of it. Elena Juliana Morano was born on a spring morning, 0.7 pounds, 3 ounces, with her father's dark hair and my grandmother's eyes. She screamed her way into the world with lungs that promised a powerful voice, then settled immediately when Luca began to hum the melody that had started everything. She knows it, he whispered, watching our daughter's eyes drift closed. She recognizes the song. Course she does. She's been hearing it for 9 months. I reached out, touching her impossibly small fingers. Play it for her. Really play it. He retrieved his guitar from the corner of the hospital room. He'd insisted on bringing it, had refused to consider that our daughter might be born without music present, and began to play. The same melody my grandmother had written 70 years ago. The same song that had brought Juliana back to her son. The same notes that had led me to the love of my life, Elena, our Elena, slept peacefully through all of it. Welcome to the family, I whispered, stroking her dark hair. You have a lot of people watching over you. People you'll never meet, but who loved you before you existed. Who made you possible. She yawned, utterly unimpressed by the magnitude of the moment. I laughed, and Luca laughed, and somewhere in the distance I could have sworn I heard 2 women laughing with us, sisters, reunited at last. 1 year later, we celebrated Elena's first birthday in Fiano Romano. The house that Luca had bought, our house now, the house where my grandmother had grown up, was full of family. My parents, who'd fallen in love with Italy and now visited every chance they got. My brother, with the girlfriend he'd finally admitted was serious. Lucia, now 95 and determined to live long enough to see Elena walk, and everywhere music. Luca played guitar on the terrace while Elena bounced in my lap, clapping her hands to the rhythm. The local musicians he'd befriended over our many visits joined in, turning a birthday party into an impromptu concert. Children from the village ran through the gardens, their laughter mixing with melodies that had echoed through these hills for generations. Your grandmother would have loved this, my mother said, settling beside me on the bench. All of it. The house, the music, the baby. She always dreamed of coming back here, you know. She just never found the courage. I know. I watched Elena try to grab her father's guitar strings. I wish she could have seen it. Seen us. She can. My mother squeezed my hand. Wherever she is, she can see. And she's proud, Clara. So incredibly proud. I wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe that somewhere, somehow, Elena Rossi knew that her music had survived. That it had brought her family back to the village she'd fled. That it had healed wounds she'd thought would never close. Luca looked up, catching my eye across the terrace. He smiled, that smile I'd come to love more than anything, and mouthed 3 words. I love you too, I mouthed back. Elena shrieked with delight as someone handed her a tambourine, which she immediately used to hit her father on the head. Luca pretended to be mortally wounded, collapsing dramatically while our daughter giggled. This was my life now. Warmth, music, and family and love, woven together so tightly I couldn't imagine them apart. This was what my grandmother had given me. Not just a song, but a legacy. A connection to a past I'd never known, a present I'd never expected, and a future I couldn't wait to live. That night, after the guests had gone and Elena was asleep in her crib, I sat at my grandmother's piano and played not the famous melody, the one that had started everything. Something new. Something I'd been working on for months, a song that told our story from beginning to end. The Lost Sisters. The Secret Song. The Miracle in a Nursing Home. The love that had grown from grief and bloomed into forever. Luca listened from the doorway, silent until the last note faded. "That's beautiful," he said. "What's it called?" "I don't know yet." I turned to face him. I was thinking maybe Full Circle, or The Sisters' Song, or just Elena and Juliana. "How about home?" He crossed the room, sitting beside me on the piano bench. "That's what this is about, isn't it? Finding home. Finding where you belong." "Home," I repeated, testing the word. "Yes. I like that." He kissed my forehead. "Play it again?" "Only if you play with me." He retrieved his guitar, settling into the chair beside the piano. And together, the way we did everything now, we played. The music drifted through open windows, out into the Italian night, across hills that had witnessed 70 years of waiting. Carried with it all the love our grandmothers had felt for each other, all the pain of their separation, all the joy of their reunion through us, and somewhere in the universe I knew they were listening, finally together, finally home. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you enjoyed, she played his mother's favorite